Private islands owned by cruise lines, they're very popular lately, aren't they? Beaches, bars, cabanas, zip lines, beach clubs, private transport, private staff, private everything. And yet, they all seem to be in one place, the Caribbean and the Bahamas, which is considered part of the Caribbean region, culturally, politically, and from a tourism perspective. Not the Mediterranean, not Asia, not the South Pacific, nowhere else. Now here's the thing, the Mediterranean is absolutely rammed with cruise ships most of the year. Ports are very busy, and there are many ships which home port there permanently. So why haven't cruise lines rolled out perfect day islands off Greece, Italy, or Spain? Today, we're unpacking the real reasons, the structural, legal, economic truth only we're willing to tell you. Let's be honest about something. Cruise lines don't usually own these islands in the way you own a house. What they control is far more important. They secure exclusive access, long-term leases, often 50 to 99 years, control over who enters, control over pricing, control over staffing, over infrastructure. In other words, they don't necessarily need sovereignty or ownership. They need dominance and governance. In 2026, Royal Caribbean's perfect day at CocoCay is projected to generate more than $600 million. These aren't beaches with a gift shop, they are giant profit machines. And no wonder why cruise lines love pushing them so much. The Caribbean offers something no other region can. It isn't the beaches, it isn't the sunshine, it is leverage. Many Caribbean nations depend heavily on cruise tourism. Just take Jamaica, 30% of the country's GDP is generated by tourism alone, compared to the UK, where tourism contributes just 5% towards our GDP. Countries like Jamaica and other Caribbean and Bahamian islands have small populations. They have limited alternative industries, and they are willing to trade exclusivity for guaranteed revenue. That is the economic reality. If a cruise line says, we'll bring you the same ships every week, all year, and invest hundreds of millions into infrastructure, that is politically persuasive, especially when the land involved is a small key, an uninhabited or lightly populated island that isn't culturally sacred and it isn't electorally sensitive. This is why the private island model started in the Caribbean and stayed there. The Mediterranean is not short of cruise ships. In 2025, 147 cruise ships owned by 52 different cruise lines operated in the Caribbean. I didn't even know there was 52 cruise lines. Ships are home ported in Barcelona, Civitavecchia, Piraeus and Marseille, to name a few, year round. So no, this is not just about traffic. The difference is how that traffic is used. European coastlines are sovereign cultural places. Beaches in much of Europe are public by law, government protected, and emotionally charged. Try telling Italians, this beach is now for cruise passengers only. That conversation lasts about 10 seconds and ends in court. Try telling the French that foreign tourists can use this private beach in the south of France, but locals can bog off. That would end up on the front page of tabloids. And you know the French, they'll look for any excuse to start a riot. Even where beaches are privately operated, access rights remain fiercely defended. A private cruise island requires restricted access, controlled entry, fenced off zones, cruise-only transport. That is fundamentally incompatible with European norms. In the Caribbean, a vast majority of Caribbean and Bahamian governments and citizens welcome cruise ships with open arms, as they bring wealth and opportunity. In the Mediterranean and other parts of the world, cruise ships are tolerated. However, the one advantage that Europeans do quite like is how the money from cruise ships spreads. On a normal Mediterranean port call, passengers spill into a city. They eat at local restaurants, they use local taxis and Ubers, they book independent tours, they spend money in shops. Money spreads far and wide. Ports are more than happy for cruise passengers to spend money. That is the one thing they actually like about us, and it gives governments in many of those countries in Europe political justification for allowing cruise ships in. A private island does the complete opposite. There is no town, there is no independent cafes, and there are no competing tour guides. No benefit to locals or local businesses, unless they employed a handful of locals, which really isn't going to have much appeal to a European government. They need more. Every drink, every excursion, every sunbed, every bus is owned or controlled by the cruise line. From a Mediterranean government's perspective, the question becomes, why would we accept congestion, emissions and pressure so one corporation can capture 100% of the shore spend? There is no upside. In the Caribbean, the trade-offs are different. Guaranteed volume beats dispersed spend and contributes huge sums of money to economies that need it. Europe is hostile terrain for projects like this. Environmental opposition in Europe is organised, controversial, media savvy, and politically charged. Just opening a standard cruise port can face years of opposition, and that doesn't stop once it's opened. Just look at Amsterdam, Barcelona, and Santorini. Make sure you check out this video now to find out why Amsterdam is trying to ban cruise ships by 2035. But opening a brand new private island would trigger environmental impact assessments, NGO challenges, there would be national inquiries, there would definitely be EU level scrutiny. Many islands in Europe are environmentally protected nature reserves. Just take the Farne Islands off the UK, a nature reserve for puffins, seals and other species. Or the Medes Islands off Spain, protected for its bird species, vibrant red coral and diverse fish populations, with more than 1,400 species inhabiting the island. Can you imagine if one of the big cruise lines tried to take one of those? It wouldn't be controversial, it would be radioactive. God knows what Greta would say. The Caribbean has some environmental opposition too, but it is on an entirely different level to Europe. Enforcement varies significantly, economic pressure is much more desperate, and political resistance is much weaker. Let's talk about something far more basic than politics or economics: the weather. Most people cruising the Caribbean are there for the same reasons: sunshine, white sand beaches, high temperatures, and crucially, consistency. A cruise line can sell a private island in the Caribbean in January, February, March, July, October. Yes, I'm aware that there is a hurricane season, but cruise lines keep everything crossed that it won't affect their itineraries. As long as a hurricane doesn't get in the way, the product barely changes. That matters because private islands only work if ships keep coming, week after week, month after month, all year round. That level of consistency simply does not exist in the Mediterranean. Yes, cruise ships are there all year round, but numbers drop sharply outside the core season, and many people, including us, actively avoid Mediterranean cruises between October and March. Why? Because the thought of Rome at 6 degrees Celsius is not that enticing. Barcelona in winter rain doesn't make me sizzle. And Greece in January to see the necropolis is fascinating, but you're not supposed to see it in pouring rain. Private islands need volume and predictability to make the numbers work. And the Mediterranean and other parts of the world, they can't offer that. But the thing is, people don't go to the Mediterranean for guaranteed heat. They go for the history. They go for culture. They go for the cities, the architecture, the food. Lived in places with stories. Across Europe, you are surrounded by buildings that have survived 2 world wars, empires rising and falling, generations of real life. Many pubs in the UK are older than the United States. That's not a dig, it's context. In Rome, Barcelona, Athens, Naples, you're walking through layers and layers of history. You don't replace that with a water slide and a bar and call it an upgrade. If you take away the cities, the culture, the experience, what exactly is left that makes the Mediterranean the Mediterranean? Why would international travellers fly all that way to join a ship that visits some mock-up Americanised private island rather than authentic ports with bags of history and culture? I know that that wouldn't appeal to us. But we've spoken a lot about the Med. Why not anywhere else in the world? Why not Asia? Why not the Indian Ocean? Why not the South Pacific? They're pretty warm all year round, right? Because the Caribbean has scale plus repetition. Other regions may have geography, space, willing governments, but what they don't have is weekly loops, high-density home porting, predictable demand, and operational simplicity. Private islands don't work unless ships keep coming back again and again and again. Unless there was a home port in these regions like Miami, which has more than 100 cruise ships home porting there annually, it won't happen. Many of these islands are less than 180 miles from Miami and Fort Lauderdale, and just 240 miles from Port Canaveral. This is ideal for cruise lines. The gods really have dropped these islands onto the laps of the big Florida-based cruise lines. And my God, are they laughing. But don't be taken in by the advertising and the marketing for these private islands. They have a lot to offer, don't get me wrong. Half Moon Cay is one of our favourite places in the world, but I know that these private islands aren't being built to improve our vacations. They are being built to control cost, capture revenue, and maximise profits. Cruise lines don't like it when you get off the ship. They want you to stay on board and spend money. A private island owned by them or operated by them, they get over that problem. They get to squeeze money out of you, whether you're ashore or on board. But there are other benefits. Cruise lines get to remove port fees, independent vendors, price competition, political uncertainty. These islands are immensely efficient, but the Mediterranean is inefficient by design because it belongs to cities, countries, people, not owned by big multi-billion-dollar corporations. Don't go thinking that cruise lines have just overlooked the Mediterranean and other parts of the world. The Mediterranean simply doesn't want its most beautiful and idyllic islands to be owned by some American corporation. And may that sort of attitude continue long into the future.